Welcome to the Influence and Inspire podcast, episode 21. And I'm delighted to say my guest today is Cheryl Phoenix, a businesswoman, speaker, and founder of the Black Child Agenda. Welcome, Cheryl.
Greetings, good afternoon.
How are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, good. So, Cheryl, before the Black Child Agenda, you started off working in media
That's right.
and you worked your way up into event management, global event management.
hmm
Is this something that you enjoyed doing?
Absolutely. It was a great buzz. It was very lucrative.
Hmm.
Um, and, I jet setted around the world quite frequently.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it was good. But, everything has its time.
Yeah, yeah. And you jet setted around the world, and you were actually giving speeches yourself at that point, were you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I used to do a lot of events in places like Qatar, Dubai, Africa. So, yeah, I knew that from a child I was quite a busy speaker, so to speak. So I used my skills and I was asked to speak quite a few times. I think there was a time where a speaker hadn't actually turned up, and
Hmm.
that's where I got my first opportunity to actually speak because I knew the subject matter quite well.
Okay, okay. And do you still sit on the London Development Agency's
Oh no,
BMA
that's
grant?
been disbanded for some years now.
Ah,
As it sits at the moment, yeah, that's gone from a while ago. I think that was tied up just as soon as Ken Livingstone left power,
oh wow,
not
quite a long
long
time ago.
after. So that's been quite a while. But it was good. They tried to
Hmm.
do a lot, particularly with the African and Caribbean business community. They, earmarked a lot of funding and things like that for black businesses.
Yeah. Do you know if anything's replaced that, or if there's anything similar out there at the moment?
Do you know, I don't think there is, because I remember as soon as Boris Johnson came in, he actually just scrapped all of that types of funding for the BME communities
Mm.
and was only solely focused on new communities, i.e. the Polish and the Somali community, who were newer communities than us as the African and Caribbean communities.
Okay.
So that got scrapped years ago, and I think he only put like £20,000 in the pot for African and Caribbean communities for the year. So you know that that does nothing.
Yeah, it's not going to go very far, is it?
Exactly.
So, Cheryl, I suppose we'll talk about the Black Child Agenda. And what inspired you to start the Black Child Agenda?
Um, Two things. One was my own son who was being victimized in school, um, locked in classrooms or locked in isolation, they
Hmm.
call it. Statements falsified with him having to sign them or the threat of being excluded. And at that time, my eye was kind of off the ball because I was dealing with this, and my late husband was quite ill.
Hmm.
He had sickle cell and subsequently passed away.
Yeah.
That obviously had an effect on my children,
Hmm.
um, and still does to this day, actually. But even with that, rather than the school taking a stance of support, they took a stance of Stalin type activities. And just made their lives hell. So what I got to find out was that, well, my son was unofficially excluded, so he was never excluded from school, but wasn't allowed to return to school.
Okay.
And at the time, I wasn't, like I said, on the ball to
Mm.
really go deep and find out what I could do. And even when I was trying to find support, because there's no legal aid for education law, it was almost impossible.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I found that there was a lot of people, young people out of school, and thought that was a bit weird. And
Mm.
then after I had my case followed for about 18 months to 2 years by one of the reporters from a mainstream newspaper, The Guardian,
Hmm.
and put my case out there, went to Parliament, all kinds of different things. And that's how basically, effectively, the Black Child Agenda started, because I saw that there was a lot of children, particularly boys, who were not in school, who weren't excluded from school, but were just on the roads and
Mm.
getting themselves into trouble.
Yeah.
And, I thought, wow, there's something in this. So, yeah, that's how I started it.
Okay. And in your own personal situation, was your son successful in achieving what he had to achieve at that point?
Yeah, the lucky thing was it's quite interesting because as much as I called around and tried to find support and tried to do as much research as possible for the time that I was in the house,
Hmm.
um, it was actually a lawyer from central London who saw my case in The Guardian
Hmm.
and contacted me. and offered to basically pay for my son to go to a private boarding school or to a private
Oh,
school so he could get his GCSEs, a tutor, anything that needed to happen. He made sure that it happened to make sure that my son wasn't, in a predicament where he was just some statistic, basically. So yeah, he did get his GCSEs, and he was okay after that. Well, okay, psychologically he wasn't okay, but
yeah.
at least he got the grades that he wanted to go on and do what he wanted to do.
Okay. Okay. One of the aims of the Black Child Agenda is tackling the schools to prison pipeline.
Hmm.
Can you just explain this pipeline?
How the school to prisons pipeline works is like I said, my son was kept in isolation quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
This is like being in isolation in a prison. And what I tend to find is that a lot of our children are put in this isolation. So it's basically a room in a school.
Mm-hmm.
You have no work a lot of the time. They're supposed to give you work. You're supposed to go there to reflect on your actions for the day.
Mm-hmm.
But what tends to happen, they leave you in there for sometimes 4 weeks at a time, based on if your child's got natural hair, if they speak out in class, whatever it may be, they will
Mm-hmm.
be put in this isolation room by themselves, often with no schoolwork and oftentimes with no lunch either.
Mm.
So they're in this room all day, and this is a form of punishment that the schools are using.
Yeah.
Now, when you really break down how, if you're treated this way, eventually you're going to become resentful.
Mm-hmm.
And that resentful will manifest itself in many different ways. Probably not bother go to school, probably start making friends on the road. And schools systematically use this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you as a child are in isolation, you're more than likely, for a certain period of time, you're more than likely going to be excluded from school at
Mm-hmm.
some point. If you're excluded from school, you'll end up in a pupil referral unit. Pupil referral units are commonly known that they are run by some of these security firms that run juvenile detention centres.
Okay.
And children rarely leave those places with any formal qualifications. Most children that go there are at least a level 5,
Mm.
sometimes even as high as a level 7. 9 out of 10 of them are black boys. Drugs in those places are quite rife. Children basically do what they want. And there's no actual real discipline. They're known as the dumping ground for children. And like I said, 9 out of 10 of the children that go there are black.
Mm.
So with that, you almost assign, you're more than likely going to come into contact with the police if you intend to prove, particularly for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And you're more than likely could be groomed by older boys to start maybe carrying things to their friends,
Mm.
etc., etc. And then more than likely you'll come in, like I said, come into contact with police, and then that's where the spiral begins. So it's quite systematic in
Mm-hmm.
how the approach, and you have to understand that central government actually have a direct interest in filling prisons. Remember, the prison system in this country is going to become privatized.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is going to be privatized. All the prisons that we know that are based in London are going to be private,
Yeah.
and they need inmates, and
Mm-hmm.
those inmates look like us. So we're going to have the modern day slave trade right before our very eyes, and we're just walking blindly into it.
Okay, that's a revelation. This prison pipeline. You really simplify it, but it is really worrying. Hearing you go through this pipeline. Cheryl, are you able to get into any schools to discuss how they deal with kids that they believe aren't behaving correctly, and give them any options or any alternatives to the isolation that they currently use?
The thing is, with the schools, 9 out of 10 reasons why I'm in the school is to challenge what they've done with regards to a child or a parent.
Mm-hmm.
So a parent will contact me with regards to their child's been excluded, or they feel their child's been unfairly treated, discrimination, etc., etc. So they will contact me to come in and go through the legal process with them
Mm-hmm.
on how to actually change that and to
Yeah.
hold the school to account.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is I haven't lost a case yet. So that just gives you an idea that means that every school I've been to thus far dealing with them have all been unlawful in how they've treated our children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that, interestingly, a lot of head teachers have contacted me with regards to saying, well, look, can you come to our school and help us to deliver something that will make our teachers more aware of how they're treating black children,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. So it is something that is in our pipeline of things to put together a program that a school will almost kite market that this school is a Black Child Agenda, approved school.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something we're working on at the moment. Obviously, these things can't be rushed. So it's something we're working on at the moment to actually roll out into schools for 2018, because the problem is real. And
Mm.
some teachers are genuinely concerned by what they see. And I have a lot of Black teachers. I spoke at the National Union of Teachers just a couple of months ago about
Mm-hmm.
this very subject, and they were completely gobsmacked, but understood when I broke it down to them in more detail. They understood exactly where they had actually been party to, excluding a child when they could have taken a different stance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is a case of sometimes educating them, because no matter what, the school system's going to be there. Parents are still going to send their children to school, and this issue is not going to go away anytime soon.
Okay. Okay. Cheryl, what other services does the Black Child Agenda provide?
Right. Well, we provide advocacy, so that's going into the schools for parents. We do a lot of public speaking, so we go to a lot of events and speak about the issue just to awake parents of what's going on. We were in Manchester just a couple of months ago. Well, where are we? November last month.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, we're doing the event this week as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what else do we do? A lot of letter writing, anything to do with education. And now we've actually gone into family, because a lot of the impact of a lot of schools are using social services, for example, as weapons towards parents. So
Mm-hmm.
you're a parent that, the head teacher or the teacher's treated your child a certain way,
Yeah.
or something's happened, or bullying's going on, and as a parent, you've reported it and reported it and reported it, and nothing's being done. Your child is coming home with hair missing out the front of their head, etc.
Mm.
So what tends to happen if a parent reports it, then all of a sudden you see that social services has been called on that parent, because the school doesn't like the fact that they need to be held to account, and how
Mm-hmm.
dare this parent actually come to us and tell us anything about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we tend to deal with a lot of family law, also employment law as well, because if you're being called every day by a school to come down and pick up your child, or your child's done this, your child's done that, eventually you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
I've got 2 clients where unfortunately they came to us too late. They had actually lost their homes because they had to keep going to the school to pick up their child for minor, silly little things that all of us would have done as children. And then eventually lost her job, and then in turn lost her home. We also cover, so we've got children, we've got families, we deal with crime,
Mm-hmm.
we deal with education, we deal with safeguarding, immigration, and employment law.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. And as well as the Black Child Agenda, you also talk about the Black Family Agenda and the Black Business Agenda. First of all, the Black Family Agenda, I mean, people generally focus on having a mum and dad at home, but you've kind of expanded this and you look at it a bit more holistically. Can you just explain a bit more about that?
Absolutely. Well, like the old adage, cliche saying goes, and it is a cliche, but it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
It does take a village to raise a child. Nowadays, it's as though you can't speak to no one's child. You can't reprimand a child, because then you're accused of don't talk to my child. All of this new age attitude that is around, and then you've got these kids out there that are going crazy because they don't have that security of the village, so to speak, and for want of a better word. Whereas when we were growing up, and it does sound all nostalgic, but it's just a fact that when we were growing up, you knew that if your mum's friends saw you on the road doing or saying something or acting out of turn, your mum would know by the time you got home.
Yeah, yeah.
So the fact of the matter is, what I chose to do when I was raising my sons, who are now thankfully adults now, was I used to see a lot of children hanging out on the road. And at one stage, me and my oldest son, we were talking about, it's like, oh gosh, look at them hanging on the road. Why don't they go and do this, that, and the other? And then we both looked at each other and said, well, hold on a minute. They're children. And we as residents and people that live locally need to do something to change it. So I set up a youth club. I started engaging with my neighbors. It's like literally in your backyard. You don't have to be out there doing any weird and wonderful things. It starts on your road or in your block of flats, wherever it is that you live. And you make sure you get to know your parents, other people's parents, and who you're living amongst, because that way you end up building a safe, secure environment for your children. My children could not, if they forgot their key, for example, I don't need to worry because they could knock anyone's door on our road or even in our local vicinity and I
Yeah.
know they'll be safe because
Yeah.
I created that village mentality.
Okay.
And I find that we're not communicating. We're all, online social media warriors, but
Mm.
no one's actually living what they're talking about generally.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it, not just talking about it, actually doing it. It doesn't take much.
Mm. Okay. And also, can you tell us a bit about the Black Business Agenda?
Well, that's my first background is business,
Mm-hmm.
from UK Black Links right up until where I am now. And from a business perspective, you need economics. Without building an economic foundation for ourselves as a community, as a Black community, unapologetically, then what do you have? Our children are still going to be out begging people for jobs. Our children are still going to be out there having to deal with racial discrimination because no one wants to employ them. The Asian community is probably one of the biggest communities in this country when it comes to economic stability and also financial resources. They don't like us. English people don't like us. So we're going to still be crying in 20 years' time about the fact that they won't give us a job, massa. So until we fix up and understand the economic empowerment that we need and to raise our children to be business moguls, we're
Mm-hmm.
just going to continue to repeat the same boring cycle that we see all over our social media or the hear about the discrimination stories. How is it that we don't hear Asian people crying about discrimination? Because they employ their own family members. They
Mm-hmm.
don't give a damn about having to beg no one for a job. They make sure that their economic long-term empowerment is there.
Mm-hmm.
They will be taking over this government at some stage. It's like, just mark my words.
Mm.
So until we get to that point where we're taking business and finances and economics very seriously and training our children to be business heads, nothing's going to change. We can cry as much as we want about as many things as we want, the education system, all of these things. Nothing will change until we start putting our money where our mouth is. And we have money for flash cars.
Mm-hmm.
We have money for nice clothes. We have money for weave and going out at the weekend, but we don't have money to invest in the future generation. That's quite alarming.
Mm. Yeah. Very, very true. Very true. And just on the subject of Black businesses, once they're set up, do you know the best way of promoting Black businesses?
The best way is amongst ourselves. There's a series, because we used to have, like I said, a Black Business Directory, and that was very successful in its time. This was a few years ago. We have one online currently,
Mm-hmm.
which I have, because I'm doing the Black Child Agenda, there's just no room to fit in keeping that up to date. However, people still register their businesses daily. And there's quite a few Black business directories out there. You've got newspapers. People need to start being a bit more creative in how they do. But
Mm-hmm.
I find social media definitely works. So we just need to tap into that just more effectively. And events and networking
Mm-hmm.
is the best way. And, from there, people get to find your business. People will Google you. Make sure you've got a website, just these basic things so people can find who you are. Make sure you've got a good strapline that no one forgets. The Black Child Agenda, tackling the schools to prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else like it in the UK. So once people type in the Black Child Agenda, they know what they're looking for, or tackling the schools to prison pipeline. It's a big saying in America, but not in the UK. So people's ears do prick up and they're like, yeah, they associate that straight away with myself,
Mm-hmm.
which is good. So, it's just about branding. You are your brand, branding yourself, marketing yourself well. And it doesn't cost a fortune either.
Okay. And you mentioned UK Black Links Business Directory, and I know it's still up and running. But as you said, you don't have much time to maintain it. But people are still registering it. Would you advise people to still register on the
Absolutely,
UK
because
Black
it's
Links?
something that we're going to update the website early next year,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to get someone to manage it on my behalf and do what needs to be done. So, to make sure that it's doing what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's people, like, even if I was to tell people not to register and take the site down, they'll still register anyway. So that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be having someone maintaining that site in the new year.
Okay, good. I just want to go back slightly, just to, if something that you said in the past is that people from BME backgrounds are trying to get on in the corporate world, but we forget about our cultural differences, which make us unique. In the corporate world, that's quite difficult to be yourself and get along. How would you advise someone to get along in the corporate world without losing their identity?
Well, the thing is, it's like you're stepping into somebody else's home effectively.
Hmm.
So you have to learn to play the game, and it's just as simple as that. You
Mm.
can't be yourself, depending on what yourself is. They don't really accept you, depending on what industry you're in.
Hmm.
Well, corporates, we know how it is, suits and ties. You do. I see so many people, and even when I was in corporates, like when we had to do business deals with some of those big oil companies,
Mm.
and you see a lot of our community people there, and the laughing and what I call the cooning that has to happen just to keep you in your job, because the fact, but some people take it too far,
Mm.
where you're the first one in and the first one out as soon as they're making cuts. So you just need to be slightly more strategic and keep your mouth shut and stop chatting your business, because I find we
Mm.
love to tell these English people all of our damn business,
Hmm.
and their stereotype of us just, is just always met. So
Hmm.
making it in the corporate world, it can be done, but you've just got to be corporate. You've got to behave like them. You need to be strategic. You need to be slightly more clever and understand what you're doing, and make sure you have an exit strategy before they kick you through the door, because
Hmm.
at some point it will come.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
learners, like when I say to young people, it's like when people say, like even what I was saying with regards to setting up your own,
Hmm.
it's like, well, at the same time, why not go into their industry? Learn how the ropes work, because it works very well.
Hmm.
Learn how it works, and then you come out and you take it and you set up your own.
Yeah.
No reason why you shouldn't work there. It pays well.
Hmm.
They've got a very, very strong arm, like I said, that works globally.
Hmm.
So you use it.
Okay. Okay, Cheryl. So you still do a lot of public speaking. What are some of the subjects that you speak on at the moment?
Two main subjects is business and the Black Child agenda.
Hmm.
Those are the two areas I've just streamlined myself down to. It just makes it clear and easy, because the two for me go hand in hand.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, those are the two areas I speak on. It is business, economics, and anything to do with children, our Black Child agenda.
And do those speeches ever cross?
Sometimes, yeah. I've been at an event where I've done two talks
Yeah.
on both subjects,
All
like
right.
one in
Okay.
the morning and one in the afternoon.
Hmm. That's interesting. That's interesting. And you've got an upcoming event this Saturday,
Hmm.
Black Child Agenda. So can you tell us a bit more about the event?
Yeah, well, this week's event on the 25th is going to be in Brixton, 1-5 Hinton Road.
Hmm.
Um, and that is the first event actually to take place this year that I've organised, because the other
Okay.
one we did in Manchester, like I said.
Hmm.
And it is basically just because I see parents are calling out for some help, and it's just easier for them to come to an event. I always tell people, come with a notepad and pen, because you are going to get some gems. Um, Come down. Some of our lawyers will also be there. So, the £350 an hour consultancy fee won't be there.
Mm.
And come down, get some gems, because this event is going to be raw. It's
Mm.
going to be to the point. It's going to be factual. And that's all we have time for. There's no time for a long thing or pussyfooting around the facts.
Yeah.
That's all we deal with. We just deal with the evidence, the facts. We don't deal with emotion and your feelings. We just deal with the law as it stands. So that's what you're going to hear.
Hmm.
We've got two criminal lawyers who'll be there. We've got speakers from home education resource places. We've actually got who else have we got? We've got people that used to be in gangs, some guys that have been to jail and now actually work with central government, advising them on how to keep young people out of gangs. We've got chess going on down there, how people can encourage their children to use their minds rather
Hmm.
than their fists. We've got psychologists going to be there, mentoring programs, ICANN project.
Mm.
There's loads that's going to be down there. So it's not just, right, these are the issues. We've got people that are providing solutions, and the best solutions for you and where you live. We've also got a dress up competition for our young people as well, to come dressed as their Black past, present, or future. So someone that inspires them.
Hmm.
Could be their parents, could be their grandparents, could be anybody. And we've got a competition running for that. So there'll be lots going on. There'll be
Okay.
fun as well as the serious debate that has to happen, that's
Hmm.
not really being had out there in our community.
Okay. It sounds like lots of fun. And where can we get tickets?
People can go online, cherylphoenix.com/conference tickets.
Hmm.
and just book a ticket or a stall. I'm not even sure if there's any stalls left, or they can advertise in the small magazine that we're going to be producing for the day.
Okay, and if we're not able to come to your event this Saturday, Cheryl, when's the next time? Have you got any other events, or when's the next time you're going to be speaking? Because funny enough, I've heard you on the radio, I think twice in the last couple of weeks. Last was BBC London. So,
Okay,
well
yeah.
done for getting on there.
Thank you.
So is there any place you're planning on speaking?
Right now, no. The only thing is for the Black Child Agenda Conference, now I've just decided that I'm only going to do one a year.
Okay.
Because before I was trying to stretch myself, but I'm too busy to even do anything else. So there's only going to be one. So it'll be about this time again next year. Then I don't know. It's just as and when speaking opportunities come, I will promote it out on my social media.
Yeah.
And yeah, talk about it. But generally, it's only when I'm booked that I know where I'm going to be. And there's nothing booked outside of what I'm doing for myself right now that is there in the pipeline. I'm actually trying to wind back from anything else, to be fair, because it's just so busy,
Yeah.
so I can actually focus on doing some of the stuff that I need to do in the back office.
Okay. And what's your social media?
Cheryl Phoenix or the Black Child Agenda.
Okay. And that's on all the platforms?
All the platforms.
Okay. I'll add the links to the notes of this show. But Cheryl, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for your time, and good luck in the future, and good luck with your event on Saturday. All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.